Portugal the Man, Chris Black Changed My Life album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning. Here tonight to chat about this latest album from Alaska-based indie rock and indie pop act Portugal the Man. They've been at it since the early 2000s, which I didn't even realize they've been around that long. And you know what? They are a band that I have very conflicting thoughts on. You know, when going through their discography over the years and in my little re-listen that I've done over the last month or so, they're a band that, God, I feel like my thoughts on them and my thoughts on their music change very often from album to album. They're very early on in their career. Somebody pointed me towards the Waiter You Vultures project, and I was actually pretty shocked by it. This thing was a wild, eclectic mix of everything between progressive pop, math rock, some emo thrown in. Very, very influenced by like the works of At the Drive-In and Mars Volta, which really threw me off. And while the songwriting and some of the vocals were a little iffy, I at least, respected what the band was doing. But then instantly their follow-up album, Church Mouth, which came out a couple of years later, was so stylistically all over the place, I could not even sit through it. Not even, a couple of weeks ago when I tried to listen to it again, it just, God, it stinks. But with Censored Colors a few years later, they started shifting more into the sound that they've really, gotten most accustomed with. And that was a more psychedelic rock and psychedelic pop sound. And honestly, I thought they did it a lot of justice. I mean, I wouldn't put this in the same bucket as some of what MGMT was doing around the time, like, Congratulations, or, anything that Foxygen was putting out at the time. But I did really salute their dedication to the sound. And I could say that even more so for their follow-up album, The Satanic Satanist. This was a joyous and very colorful psych pop record that honestly was really performed well, wrote well, and just, I don't know, I really do enjoy it. But then American Ghetto, once again, stylistically, this thing was a disaster. I could not get through it once again. But for a few short years after that, I was really enamored with what the band was doing. In the Mountain in the Cloud, I thought was one of their best projects. I thought the production here was super crisp, and most importantly, it was really, really fun. And Evil Friends, which came out shortly after, I didn't really understand the hate that this album was getting. I thought it might have been their best project. Now, the last time we heard from Portugal the Man was 2017's Woodstock. They definitely blew up with the Feel It Still single, and essentially, overall, this was their pop record. And, there's some great moments on there, but overall, I do think they kind of phoned it in at the end of the day, which leads me to this new album. And, I wasn't that hyped for it. I wasn't really craving a new Portugal the Man album, but I thought the singles here were really good leading up to it, and you know what? It's actually pretty darn good. Early on in the album, we get tracks like Grim Generation, and this thing is absolutely funky as anything. I love the weirdo sampling that we get here and the sunny and carefree vibe. This track has a lot of personality to it, like it or not. It's got that lyrical gut punch. Portugal the Man have been kind of doing this modern hippie stuff for quite some time now, and if you don't like it, you're probably not going to like this album either, but I think they're doing it a lot of justice on this album. I mean, there's such a immense amount of trash in modern indie pop and psych pop and even alternative rock, but the material we get on this album is actually really stomachable. The group vocals, the psychedelic vibes, the triumphant horns, this is great. Then we get Thunderdome, Welcome to America, featuring Black Thought and Natalia Lafourcade, and this is a really fantastic track. I mean, once again, as far as modern weirdo psych pop goes, this is a very clean, very digestible album that you can take in pretty quickly, but I feel like they do it justice. I could put this track on and just groove. I love the laid-back riff. Natalia on this hook sounds great, and Black Thought, I mean, much like his work over the last 5 years or so, he brings his A game. It's sharp, it's catchy, and it's just weird enough. I have a lot of the same things to say about Dummy. This was one of the first singles I heard from this album. I do really like the off-kilter and weirdo riff that we get here, as well as the oddball vocal snippets. All of that alongside a very soulful performance and a big hook. It's really legit. I mean, yes, it is a little straightforward, but if you can get past that, it's actually a lot of fun. And Summer of Love, featuring Unknown Mortal Orchestra. What did we do to deserve this track? This is one of the best alternative and indie rock singles I've heard all year. I love, once again, just how chilled out and laid back this is. It's incredibly soulful, this track as a whole, and the horns that pop in on the chorus, those are sexy. I mean, this track just makes me want to get in my car and go to the beach, and I freaking hate the beach. Now, I will say this, there are a couple of very awkward tunes here that do not go over well. Like Heavy Games 2 featuring Jeff Basker. This is a very awkward intro to this album that just did not need to be here. I mean, this album is jam-packed with some of their most colorful and just fun material in years, and this does not usher in any of that as an intro. Like this stripped-down ragtimey ballad, it's just very weird. And Times of Fantasy featuring Jeff Basker again. Both of his features on this album are pretty underwhelming. Honestly, this is the worst track here, and just a rough ride. These over-dramatic, over-manipulated vocals are just cringy. It's ugly and not nearly as emotional or dramatic as anybody thinks it is in this band. Clearly, it's a very slippery slope still, and I have a lot of the same feelings, sadly, on this album's closing track. Yes, Anxiety, Clarity featuring Paul Williams, easily the longest track here, well over 5 minutes, and it is kind of a jumbled mess. I mean, the second half of this album, which we will chat about momentarily, is much more bluesier and emotional, and there's a lot of great material there, but then you hear this, and it's all for nothing. This is leftovers. There's nothing exciting here. This is the farthest thing from a vibe. I mean, the second half of this track does pick up instrumentally. It's got some weird detours, but overall, this ain't it. It seems rushed, rehashed, and the voiceover does absolutely nothing. But outside of that, as far as modern alternative rock, indie pop, psychedelic pop, whatever you want to call it, this album actually has a lot going for it. I mean, I think that Doubt is a really great track too. It's a much more dramatic and piano-driven track, which, you know, might alienate some. It's very different than the material in the first half of this album. But throw in some wonky production and some soulful performances, and yeah, it worked. It's impressive. There's a lot of heart and drama here. Ghost Town is equally as laid back and chilled out as most of this album, but it is a little bit on the darker and more grim side. The bluesy elements are there, and I love how haunted this chorus comes off. The campy synths and the dense production, and just how chilly this track is, it's done really well. And Plastic Island, which may be the most sterile and clean track here, it's still pretty darn good. It's bluesy, it's downtrodden, the production's really good too, and yes, it's not as sunny and unbelievably catchy as the material that we got early on, which is a little bit of a bummer for me, but the heart is there, and the performances are great. I mean, this track could have been very bloated and cheesy and one of the worst tracks here, but it comes off okay. And the wailing guitar solo that ends this track off, it's great. And Champ featuring Edgar Winter is one of the oddest collaborations on this album, but it's one that really works to their advantage. It's easily the bluesiest and the dreariest track here. We get a scuzzy riff, we get some pianos that are super classy. It's pretty tragic overall, but I respect it. It's done, you know, well. And the final moments of this track are some of the heaviest on this entire album. It's pretty shocking and really exciting, honestly. Yeah, I'm vibing with this album quite a bit. I mean, as somebody who has, you know, never been that into Portugal the Man, or, you know, my thoughts have gone so back and forth on them over the years, I think this is one of their more consistent projects. And yeah, there's some slippery slopes on this album. It gets straight up awkward from time to time, but the bulk of just genuinely great indie rock, alternative rock, and psych pop that populates this album is really likable, man. The hooks are here, the performances are soulful and super heartfelt, and the collaborations, most of them go over better than they probably should. Yeah, I'm liking this thing. Just don't hate me if their next album I'm just not into at all, or I can maybe not even sit through it. For now, though, I'm feeling a light 8 on this project, but let me know what you all think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.